Greetings, everyone, from the beautiful San Gabriel Valley in Southern California. And today I'm going to be playing a video, and it's about Andrew Tate and his influence. Basically, everybody who is enough on social media knows who Andrew Tate is, and he is someone who should be taken seriously when we think of young men, even non-young men, right? Because this is the problem with that movement, the Red Pill movement, right? It addresses a lot of truths about the world of women, the world of dating, marriage, and the persecution, you could say, masculinity is under. But this is the problem, right? See, when men start waking up to these, to feminism and the plague that it is, oftentimes they'll be introduced to something that seems to be the solution, but is really controlled opposition to keep you in the web of degeneracy and demoralization. And in this video, you're going to see how this influence of Andrew Tate is actually kosher. And what we need to do is, as patriotic young men and older men like me, is we need to recognize this, that these morals that are being espoused by an Andrew Tate type of person, or the Red Pill movement, do not align up with what an honorable man should look to as true masculinity. And then if you're a Christian like I am, which I hope you all are that are going to come across this video, you should line it up with God's word ultimately and see that it doesn't fit. So right now we're in a, I guess I'll use the word crisis in America, right? We're really, more and more people are demoralized. More and more Americans aren't patriotic anymore. Even people that normally would have been in the past, regular people, not leftists, just right wing, they're not patriotic no more. They've been black-pilled on our country. But this is exactly what Andrew Tate is there to do, because the foundation of any healthy country is the family unit. And the family unit, the core of that is, of course, the parents, a wife and a husband, marriage, and then them having kids. So let's take this. Share this screen. Okay. And we'll just take a listen here.
Hello, it's your friend CJ Werleman, and in this episode, we present evidence suggesting that Andrew Tate is a psychological weapon for the State of Israel and its Arab ally, the United Arab Emirates. But first, please remember to like and subscribe to our show and ensure your notifications are turned on so you never miss a single episode. Now let's get into it. Last month, Netanyahu described social media as Israel's most important weapon in its campaign to win back American and European support amid the ongoing genocide in the Palestinian territories. A campaign backed up with an eye-popping $1 billion worth of propaganda, representing a 500% increase from 2025.
To fight with the weapons that apply to the battlefields in which we're engaged. And the most important ones are the social media.
Because the next war will be decided based on how Israel and its allies perform online as much as offline.
This is the eighth front, the disinformation campaign.
It is actually this eighth front where our enemies believe they can actually defeat the Jewish state.
This is the kind of ingenuity and inventiveness that have always been a hallmark of the state of Israel, that have always been a characteristic of the Jewish people. I know we can do it.
A lot of this is done with money.
Invested billions and billions of dollars in the information battlefield.
Money of NGOs, vast. Money of governments, vaster.
This newly launched propaganda campaign is nicknamed the Esther Project, and it was launched last year in Washington, D.C. by a right-wing think tank known as the Heritage Foundation, which is tasked with identifying social media influencers who not only have large audiences, but are also willing to push pro-Israel propaganda in exchange for cash, with many earning as much as $7,000 per tweet, post, or reel.
I brought you this from Israel. It's a bracelet. It's to protect you from Israel.
They are the American social media stars pushing a pro-Israel agenda on the internet. And now it seems they can get a whole lot richer doing it.
I had to come to Gaza to see the truth with my own two eyes.
The Israeli government has launched a campaign to pay US influencers for positive posts to counter negative public opinion over Gaza.
Nobody is more influential on social media than Andrew Tate, certainly not in the Western world, where he has earned his title as the world's most searchable man on the internet, despite being credibly accused and indicted on rape, sex trafficking, and illegal pornography charges. He
This is the thing. What is Andrew Tate known for? Those sexual crimes. And what he's done is he's galvanized a group of young men who feel ostracized because of the persecution of masculinity and feminism. And instead of giving the true solution, which is one, to put your trust in Christ, to live a morally excellent life, arete, he's teaching young men that to have women kind of like somewhat at your beck and call, meaning you have this dominance over them, and to have various women, that it's cool, right? That's what being a man is. Now listen, because I know someone who watches this, oh, you're a simp, you think, no, well, listen, it is a fact that to be a true man, you protect those who are weaker, you don't take advantage of them, you don't dominate them, but you protect them. And I mean, it's taught in the scriptures. It's just what real men have always done. It doesn't mean you tolerate their bad behavior. Well, Andrew Tate is offering men this kind of false masculinity that is degenerate. And he's been associated with Nick Fuentes and this Groyper movement. And the clarion call from them is, reducing the age of consent. Why? Because the more you lower the age of consent, the quicker you take away the innocence of a girl, right? And Western women have already been so scandalized because of twerking culture, hookup culture. And this hookup culture that they talk about now is nothing new. The phenomenon of it goes back to the 60s with the free love hippie movement. And the thing is that you notice a lot of these influencers in the Red Pill movement, they're single, they're older. They don't care. A lot of them probably don't even have kids or have daughters, or if they do, they're not living with them, they're not taking care of them, like meaning they're not raising them, like day-to-day living with them, their mom. And so what it does is just further desensitizes people towards things like pedophilia, statutory rape, And notice, and you have the Groyper Nick Fuentes now with this whole Jeffrey Epstein has aura. Fuentes promoting Jeffrey Epstein merch. So you see that the degeneration of Andrew Tate, and you have men hanging upon his every word because it's like cool to them, right? As the Groyper Nick Fuentes crowd would say, oh, he has aura or whatever. Because he has dominance over women, and he has many women, and he brags about the way he treats them. Now listen, and why that appeals to the modern man, the modern young man, is because let's face it, in America, in the West now, women pretty much control their men. Like pretty much dominate their men. Right? You can't tell women anything these days. So that appeals, but it's just taking you to another end of the spectrum. It's giving you a false solution. But anyways, let's listen to some more.
Remains the ultimate manipulator of vulnerable young men, all of which is widely known. So let's focus instead on his current schemes and plots, particularly as they relate to his alleged covert influence operations for the Zionist regime. But before we delve into that, let's turn the clock back to 2022, the year that I warned his alleged conversion to Islam was nothing more than a ruse to lure vulnerable young Muslim men into his web of deceit. But having been badly exposed as a complete fraud in the West, he's now looking for a new target audience, specifically young Muslim men who have become drawn to him by his appearance of wealth, success, and hypermasculinity. In other words, Muslims are his new target market. I also said that it was likely that Andrew Tate had become a newly minted recruit for Israel's online propaganda efforts, given his behavior borrowed from the same Zionist playbook used by Canadian psychologist Jordan Peterson, who had successfully built a large Muslim audience by pandering to Islamic sensibilities.
I have been informed by many sources and also observed online, not least because of my discussions with a variety of Muslim thinkers, supporters, and critics, that I have developed an audience in the Muslim world.
As soon as Peterson's Muslim fan base grew to a considerable size, his messaging suddenly took a noticeable change, but not in a way that pleased Muslims, but in a manner that served the interests of Israel, with his weekly sermons becoming subtly and not so subtly infused with Zionist talking points.
And all this is lovely to see in the aftermath of the extraordinary Abraham Accords, which have laid out the possibility for peace between all the people of the book in an unprecedented manner.
In praising the Abraham Accords, a deal in which the United Arab Emirates threw the Palestinians to the wolves in exchange for Israeli trade deals and American weapons and surveillance technologies, Peterson encouraged Muslims to support the Zionist occupation. Because as Peterson and Netanyahu know all too well, that if they can somehow manage to build widespread support for Israel's normalization in the Muslim world, then it's effectively game over for the Palestinian people and a future Palestinian state. Thankfully, however, only the UAE, Bahrain, and Morocco have committed this ultimate act of treachery, which is why Israel is now engaged in a full court press to bring Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan to the table, a feat that will forever secure Israel's settler colonial enterprise in the Middle East. But before that can happen, there needs to be an enormous shift in global public opinion. Because as it stands, everyone hates Israel and everyone stands firmly with Palestine, leaving the Zionist state with no other choice other than to throw vast amounts of money and resources at its public perception problem. Netanyahu can be heard saying, "Crank up the propaganda machine, cue the social media influencers, and get me Andrew Tate," a man Israel and/or powerful Zionists have tried to recruit on no fewer than 5 separate occasions, at least according to Andrew Tate. Well,
that's interesting, right? So it looks like Andrew Tate is used as a tool, right, to fool Muslims and to subvert Islam and their religion, their culture. Well, the same is happening on the Christian side. Nick Fuentes, and I've talked about that. Now, Nick Fuentes claims to be this virgin celibate guy, but there's strong evidence that there is homosexuality there. Well, I wouldn't say strong evidence, there's strong implications. And this latest thing that he did on Jeffrey Epstein, having Aura, and all the Groypers are pushing that, and him having Jeffrey Epstein merch and saying that what Jeffrey Epstein was doing, it wasn't pedophilia. Like, you wonder what's behind that defense of Jeffrey Epstein and talking about he has Aura. Well, it's a subversive ploy to have young men put their defenses down, young Christian men put their defenses down. And this continual call for the lowering of age of consent because of, trying to figure out. Now, I don't even know where Christians get this idea that Mary was like real young when she got married. One, we shouldn't even speculate. And the fact is, there is a reason why the age of consent in America is 18 years old. Because even if, and the stupid argument that, oh, well, once a girl goes to puberty, she's physically able to have kids. No, well, there's still a mental thing that needs to catch up. Even in pre-Christian society, in the pagan world, a lot of times a girl wouldn't get married till she was 20, right? I believe 18 is the perfect age for the age of consent. And, okay, if it went down to 16, that's fine. But see, my point is that they're trying to normalize. The end goal is to normalize pedophilia, where it desensitizes people to it. So the lower you push that age of consent, and you know what oftentimes it is? Oftentimes it's older perverted men that are pushing for this. Because, when you're a young man, you don't care about that because all these girls that are young are your age, and you're allowed legally to be with them and, have a relationship with them. So notice it's these older men. They want that. So look at the perversion there. And listen, this is how the Zionists are going to win this. This is how the Zionists are going to win this war. They're going to win it. See, right now you have a strong anti-Jewish sentiment in America all over the world. Go to X. Like, your feed will be filled with anti-Jewish sentiment. That's not what's going to win it for us. And when I say us, I'm talking about Christian, American patriots, Western man in general. What's going to win it for us is if we ourselves live out morally excellent lives. That is the victory over the synagogue of Satan. So don't think that somehow because Nick Fuentes, he talks about the JQ, and that occupies a lot of his conversation, and even Andrew Tate will talk about it. Don't think that is a good thing. Because the Zionists are like giving us these characters, thinking, oh, these are anti-Zionists. But these Jews are very smart. They know, okay, they'll satisfy our impulses by giving us anti-Zionist rhetoric from social media influencers. But how they get through the back door is the ones who are presenting these anti-Zionist arguments are degenerate and encouraging subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, degeneracy. Anyways, let's go back to the video.
As it turns out, the sixth attempt was the lucky charm, because just 2 weeks ago, Tate encouraged his predominantly Muslim audience to embrace the Abraham Accords, the same way his host nation, the UAE, did.
Dubai, the UAE, allows Jews into the country, and they have an embassy for Israel. So you can either be the UAE and get business done while publicly opposing the Israeli government and get things done and be a rational actor, or you can be some extreme country, which makes you a poor little shithole. If you go to Turkey or you go to Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, any of these countries, and if you hung around there for a while, and if you knew the people I know, eventually you'd end up in conversations with people who would try and convince you to do extreme things, dangerous things. You know, it's interesting because we can even look at Islamic terror. They don't blow themselves up. They find some young guy and convince him to go blow himself up. I thought you got a bunch of virgins. Like, I'm Muslim. I'm saying if you got a bunch of virgins for blowing yourself up, surely they'd be doing it themselves. Why are they convincing someone else to do it? There is none of these divides at the top. This is the thing that people don't understand when I was talking earlier about anti-Semitism. If a Saudi billionaire parks his yacht next to an Israeli billionaire, there's no discussion of anti-Semitism. There's no problem with Palestine. They're both billionaires. This is why there's no war between those countries. There's platitudes on the TV. This is bad. But when they all meet, it's fine.
Literally none of this comes as a surprise to those who have watched Andrew Tate transform and shapeshift into a supposedly devout Muslim who sincerely cares about Palestine. He's every bit as effective as Netanyahu in selling total lies and bullshit, a skill he obtained from his father, who worked in the US military as an expert in linguistics. And then there's Tate's spiritual advisor, Miles Sonkin, also known as Ziggy Semmelweis, a Zionist Jew who called on Israel to kill every Palestinian man and enslave their wives and daughters. It gets worse. Sonkin not only described himself as a wizard, but also operates as the mastermind behind Tate's pornography tutorial website, The War Room, where members pay a monthly subscription to receive advice on how to lure women into selling photos and videos of their naked bodies on OnlyFans.com.
The world's attention has been focused on the Tate brothers and their ongoing investigation in Romania.
See, the Jews will allow so-called anti-Semitic, anti-Zionist influencers to prosper because they know that they need to kind of release the pressure valve for people that are waking up to the JQ. So they're going to present controlled opposition. And they're like, okay, we're going to let this person, gain popularity spouting anti-Zionist stuff. But there's a trade-off. Because they know that in itself is not going to win the war against them. What's going to win the war for them and going to hurt us is demoralizing those that are on the right wing that are waking up to the JQ. Okay, you want to listen to these guys spouting this rhetoric, we're going to demoralize you, we're going to present you an Andrew Tate, who is a fornicator, a pervert, he made a lot of his money on pornography, apparently abusing and sex trafficking women. And what does he call? He has that pornographic tutorial website, The War Room. He's being, apparently there's a Jewish zealot who's rabid, a rabid wanter of genocide behind him, his mastermind. But you don't think Nick Fuentes is being pulled by strings the same as Andrew Tate? Jeffrey Epstein has aura. Oh, that's not pedophilia. Promoting Jeffrey Epstein merch? Come on, man. These guys are there to provide a release valve so people do not actually take action and demoralize them morally with this desensitization of age of consent and pedophilia, Andrew Tate, pornography, the way you treat women. And then both Andrew Tate and Nick Fuentes sliding in pro-Israel propaganda in the meantime. And then doing word salads after they're called out on it to like say, oh, well, we don't want low-Q anti-Semitism. It's, again, it's double speak from both of those individuals, Tate and Fuentes. Anyways.
The Matrix has attacked.
There is a mysterious figure operating in the shadows, known as Iggy Semmelweis, who has been flying firmly under the radar. The enigmatic character, who refers to himself as a wizard and master of spells and shadows.
Here I will share with you my secrets.
And also claims to be the greatest hypnotist the world has ever known, as stated on his Twitter account.
You will learn the power of hypnosis.
A recent BBC investigation suggests that he is the true mastermind behind the war room.
Who's in charge of the war room? Iggy's at the top, yeah.
A secret all-male organization led by Andrew Tate.
The War Room is the most powerful network on the face of the planet today.
Where gray-bearded, self-styled hypnotist is accused of instructing members on how to romantically seduce, emotionally manipulate, and socially isolate women before luring them to perform on webcams, often taking all or most of the money they make.
This is the war room of Andrew Tate.
By the way, this is on the CJ Wellerman show. Well, there it is, right? And the thing is that the definition of true masculinity is self-control. The definition of an effeminate man is the opposite, giving in to impulses, living a life of pleasure, hedonism. That is the definition of a feminine man. What Andrew Tate is selling you is not masculinity. He's selling you effeminacy. Effeminate men give in to their vices, their pleasures, their impulses. A masculine man has self-control and holds back and withdraws.
OnlyFans happens to be owned by another Zionist Jew who uses his billion-dollar revenues to fund the Israeli lobby's operations in the United States. But, as they like to say in the CIA, coincidence takes a heck of a lot of planning, which brings us now to the Epstein files, in which many of the world's most powerful and influential Zionists are named throughout, which again is no coincidence, given Epstein was an Israeli agent, as confirmed last week by the highest-ranking Republican on the congressional hearings into the sex traffickers' criminal operations.
These files implicate billionaires and friends of his and political donors that he's trying to protect. And Epstein also had close ties to our own intelligence agencies and Israel's intelligence agencies. That's why there's so much effort in trying to stop this. And I do believe they'll try to stop it somewhere else. And that's going to backfire on them too.
Conspicuously, Andrew Tate joined Israel's effort to stop the release of the Epstein files by slamming Epstein's victims as liars and whores, while claiming he misses his sex trafficking days in an effort to downplay the seriousness of child rape and abuse. And on
So there you go. Tate is demonizing the women that accused Jeffrey Epstein of those vile sex crimes and sex trafficking. Notice how he calls them whores. Notice how he calls them these names. It's victim blaming. And the thing is, it doesn't matter if these women had sex freely of their own free will. Sex trafficking is sex trafficking. And oftentimes they're having sex out of this fear of reprisal, right? And statutory rape is statutory rape, regardless if the woman threw herself at the guy. It's up to the guy to have the responsibility. Okay, are you of age? You know, that's just, and people, I've had people say, oh, that's not realistic. Well, it's because you lack self-control. Men who lack self-control make decisions without thinking. Men who have self-control say, wait a minute, he looks young, I'm just going to make sure because I don't want to go to jail. So notice how Andrew Tate's, well, again, it's a defense of Epstein. It's a double-speak, double-tongued defense of Epstein, just like Nick Fuentes and the Groypers, by demonizing the victims.
On the same day that Tate tweeted that, his religious advisor in Dubai an Emirati Islamic preacher named Faris al-Hamadi, who once told Palestinians to jump in the sea, stepped forward to defend Israeli and Emirati pedophiles named in the Epstein files. It's worth repeating, coincidence takes a heck of a lot of planning.
Should we still obey the ruler if he has been in the Epstein files? أولا these files يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن جاءكم فاسق بنبأ فتبين. You read something online خلاص است قرآن يعني استغفر الله. شو أنت مجانين? You're Muslims? You think like that? Anybody who gives you any piece of news خلاص? Oh look, he's in the Epstein files. Oh my God, so true. حق, this is حق. والله you like sheep. والله sheep for the kuffar. أقسم بالله you sheep like for the kuffar.
All of this raises more questions about the pressure President Trump placed on the Romanian government to free Andrew Tate from his house arrest in the European country, a move that allowed him to travel via private jet to Florida, where he reportedly met with Trump administration officials.
Isn't that interesting? So the White House basically advocated for Andrew Tate. Tate meets with Trump. Well, we know Trump's in the Epstein files, right? We know he's been accused by, what was it, a 12-year-old that accused him and Jeffrey Epstein of raping her. And Jeffrey Epstein saying that Trump was the worst person he ever met or something to that effect. This is Epstein saying this. When Epstein says you're like the worst person he ever met, that's something to think about. Well, Trump, who was Trump associated with? Roy Cohn was his mentor. And this is why I never fell for Trump. 2016, I didn't believe in Trump at all. And here we are 10 years later, and a lot of right-wingers are dismayed because they feel deceived by Trump. No, you deceived yourself because you should have the discernment to know this guy wasn't the real deal. Birds of a feather flock together, my friends. Epstein and Trump were associated. Trump has met with Nick Fuentes. Trump has met with Andrew Tate. Why is it the most degenerate of men like Andrew Tate, Trump feels like a bond with? Or Nick Fuentes? Nick Fuentes is a degenerate. I mean, there are strong implications that he is a sodomite. The way he talks vile about women is right out of the homosexual playbook. That's how homosexuals, they hate women. And why is Trump in league? Like, why does he have this relationship with the most degenerate of men? And, you know, Trump's pro-Zionist, pro-Israel. It's all tied in. Epstein was a Mossad agent. Epstein was more than just a sex trafficker. He was an agent for Israel. And again, the end goal of this is to usher in Tikkun Olam. And before Tikkun Olam gets solidified all over the world, it is the demoralization of the Western man, the Christian man. The more they demoralize the Christian man, the less the Christian man will be strong enough to fight against the evil of the synagogue of Satan. And that's where we have to fight this war. It's one thing to expose things. It's one thing to do videos on things. But the ultimate weapon against the synagogue of Satan is living a strong, morally excellent life and proclaiming the now reigning Davidic kingship of Christ and his only begotten sonship. That is the victory. It's not in the continual exposés on the Jews. Now, there's nothing wrong with those. But that's not going to win the war. What's going to win the war is us getting back to true Christianity, kingdom Christianity, living it out, being morally excellent, rejecting these degenerate scumbags like Andrew Tate and Nick Fuentes.
And potentially even the president himself in early 2025.
Today, 2 men charged with sex trafficking in Romania arrived in the state of Florida. As you can see there, the state's Republican governor, Ron DeSantis, says he doesn't want them there, but it appears the Trump administration does. In fact, they wanted them back in the United States so badly, they appeared to have used the full might of the U.S. diplomatic apparatus to spring them from Romania, where they were being held on those charges. As the Financial Times reported earlier this month, the Tate's case was first brought up by U.S. officials in a phone call with the Romanian government. then followed up by Trump's special envoy, Richard Grenell, when he met the Romanian foreign minister at the Munich Security Conference. That is very heavy diplomatic firepower on behalf of this man accused of rape and sex trafficking. And
since Andrew Tate's reported meetings with officials from the most pro-Israel US administration in living memory, he has stepped up his efforts to push Zionist propaganda against Islam. He even called European Muslims the most extreme Muslims in the world, while subtweeting one of the most vicious pro-Israel accounts on Twitter. He told British Pakistani men to leave the United Kingdom by boat while inciting far-right violence against Muslims during the Southport riots, which
Now, like Nick Fuentes, Andrew Tate says some true things. The Muslims living in Europe, there's a very strong extreme contingent, and they should not be in Europe. And it is time that European men fight back on behalf of their women, their children, and the future of their progeny. It is time for them to fight back. So these guys like Andrew Tate and Nick Fuentes will give you some truth. So I was listening to a clip from Nick Fuentes today that was popped up on my feed, and he was saying a lot of good stuff. But again, they're going to give you truth that through the back door they bring in another agenda. So let's go back.
resulted in dozens of British Muslims sustaining horrific injuries at the hands of white supremacists and Zionists, many of whom are Tate's best friends, including notorious Muslim hater Tommy Robinson, who has proven financial ties to the Israeli government, as does his best pal, Andrew Tate. Israel is where Tate hosts his tech teams.
Attached to my name. It's very inconvenient for me. I have Jewish business partners. I have tech teams in Israel. I have things going on, and I get a mess from this crap too. I'm not here to beg sorry from anybody.
As we said at the top of this episode, Israel has allocated a record amount of cash and resources to shift global opinion against the Palestinian people and make you forget the horrors it continues to inflict on Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Iran, and Sudan. Our job is to ensure our audience never forgets and never stops challenging the pernicious influence and lies of the Zionist lobby. But we can't do this without your help.
Okay, so that's pretty much it. Again, what we have to do as Americans is avoid taking a side in what's going on in terms of the Jews, the Palestinians, and the Arabs. That's not our fight. We should not be involved in what's going on in Iran. And I've always said this regarding the Palestinians. It is their job to rise up and fight. As an American, and if I'm going to be truly patriotic, and what this country was founded on, no foreign entanglements, that's not my problem what happens with the Jews and the Palestinians. It's not my problem what happens with Israel and Iran. Well, it kind of is, only because America is obviously leading the charge. But it shouldn't be our problem. But what we have to recognize is these right-wing influencers, some of them, they're coming in, and yes, they're giving you truth about the synagogue of Satan, Zionism, the modern state of Israel, but they're backdooring it with promoting degeneracy so that men can further be weakened. So when we have Nick Fuentes talking about Epstein has aura, promoting, selling merchandise, my age of consent lowered, that's Talmudic. Same with Andrew Tate, this pornographer, this fornicator, promoting this red pill culture to young men. Again, it's to demoralize Western man, Christian man, American man, so that you're not strong enough to fight against the synagogue of Satan. Because the way we win is not by infotainment, by absorbing all this information about the Jews, right? That's not the way we win this. The way we win this is to live morally excellent lives. Yes, address the JQ, and to proclaim the Davidic kingship of Christ and get back to what America was truly supposed to be all about. No foreign entanglements, not fighting other countries' wars. And so the trap here is that now a lot of right-wingers are like even wanting to see Iran win this whole conflict, or, you know, cucking for Muslims and Islam. I mean, it's, again, what we need to do as Americans, especially Christians, is not care about either side. That's not our problem. We need to build up what remains here in America in terms of the things that are good. Recover our identity and culture as Americans, that we are Americans. And in America, with the hallmarks of America, free speech, the right to bear arms. And because there's free speech, that means there's no such thing as hate speech. There's no such thing as anti-Semitic hate speech laws, because hate speech is not an American concept. It's a European concept that's been brought to you by the Jews. And we are a constitutional, free, sovereign Christian republic. That's what we need to focus on. It's not about taking sides and waving Palestinian flags, or, you know, promoting Zionism. And, you know, let's be true Americans and make this country better, truly. And stop. You don't need to advocate for Iran and Palestinians and simp for them. You don't need to, obviously, you don't want to support the synagogue of Satan, Zionism. And the way we win this war is by living morally excellent lives. Without that, I don't care how many videos you do, how many videos, spaces on X you go on to bitching about the Jews. That's not going to do a damn thing. Follow the teachings of Christ. Live out the principles of what our country was founded on. And yes, it was founded on Christian principles as a free, sovereign Christian republic. No state Christianity, because we didn't want the problems of Europe to have a state church. But it was a Christian nation. Look at all the state constitutions. Look at all the things that our founding fathers said. Yeah, people will isolate certain things, but what the intention was, no state religion, a country without a pope or a monarch. Anyways, hail Christ, hail victory.